Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa from Gilda's Club, Grand Rapids. It's good to be together with you again today. Hope that you're all doing well and staying safe and feeling good and enjoying this time of year and preparing for Thanksgiving. I just want you all to know that all of us here at Gilda's Club are so grateful for all of you. We're grateful for our members and the public and all of you who are watching to be a part of our community and connect together in grief and in cancer. So glad to have you with us. If you're new to Gilda's Club or new to a cancer or grief journey and you'd like to know more about our free cancer and grief support program, please give us a call at 453-8300 or look on our website, gildasclubgr.org. We'd love to talk with you and help you get connected to our community. And if you're enjoying this Facebook Live, as in all of our Facebook Lives, please like this post or share it with someone. If you have a question for either of our guests, we'd love to ask them those questions. You can just post them right here on this live stream, and then we'll make sure that we feed those questions to them. So with that, we'll get started. As you can all see, I am actually at the clubhouse today, so it's kind of neat. I'm in Rosanna Dana's room, and it's really fun to be able to come to you actually from the clubhouse. And so that's an exciting moment for me here. And this week, we're going to continue to honor our National Children's Grief Month. And in light of that, we have two guests today who have come to us. One from Cincinnati, Ohio, is Peg Conway. And she has a master's in journalism, and she's worked in corporate communications before focusing on her family. And now she's an author. She writes about her experience of early loss of her mother. And she writes a number of other things also. And she also is an energy worker. And she does that on a regular basis. And she also, which I think is very cool and a nice connection for us, is that she volunteers at a grief center in Cincinnati and works with young children and helps them along their grief journey. She also has this memoir of her early mother loss and long-term grieving called The Art of Reassembly. I have a book and Lee has a book.
Yeah. I have one too, just not ready to hand.
I see that right there in the back. That's great. So it's a great book. Both Lee and I are reading it and really enjoying it. And it was just recently published. And so you can go on her website or on Amazon and get that book, right? Yeah.
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. She also has essays in the Good Men Project, the Manifest Station, in the Cincinnati Enquirer, and the Mighty. Those are all different publications. And Peg and her husband have 3 grown children and 1 grandchild. Welcome, Peg. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
All right. And then we have Lee Kennard. And I have the pleasure of working with Lee right here at Gilda's Club, and you're going to learn more about her. So stay tuned. At the end of this program, we're going to have a meet the staff portion with Lee. But she's been at GCGR for almost 10 years, which is, wow, it's just
crazy.
Yeah, it is. And she started out as the finance director, and she recently moved into the position of VP of Finance and Corporate Operations. Mm-hmm. She has a head for numbers and organization. Pretty cool. It's
Thanks.
Great to have you too here, Lee.
Thanks. Glad to be with everyone today. Thank you.
Yeah. So Peg and Lee have met each other, and I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to this organization, but in an organization called Motherless Daughters. And that was started by a woman named Hope Edelman. Am I saying that correctly?
Mhm.
Okay. And she's the author of a book called Motherless Daughters. And you guys meet monthly? What is it? How does that Motherless Daughters group work? Do you want to speak to that, Lee?
Sure, I can. Motherless Daughters encompasses a number of different things. There are Motherless Daughters support groups throughout the country, and I even believe throughout the world, in different areas. And also Hope has Motherless Daughters weekly community calls that people can sign up for that talk about a variety of different topics relative to motherless daughters. And she has guest speakers. And of course, there's Hope's book, Motherless Daughters, and then she has written other books. And Hope also leads retreats for motherless daughters who've experienced death of their mother at different ages, and amazing retreats. Peg and I have both been to different retreats, and just a really wonderful experience, and an experience that creates just bonds that last way beyond the retreat. So very good.
Oh, very neat. So that grief connection and that experiential bond that you're talking about.
Correct. Yep.
Being able to come together with someone who understands.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Oh, thank you for explaining that. So we're going to have a conversation today about that, about having about loss at an early age and what that looks like, having a person that's significant, specifically mothers today that have died when you're young, and how you organize around that and what that looks like. And our hopes here in having this conversation is to not only give speech and give normalcy to these experiences, but to let kids know that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay that they're experiencing these things, and adults some help in knowing how to help their children through this, or young people in their lives. So yeah, so just really glad to be able to do that. So Peg, you want to tell us about your story, about the death of your mother and your experience as a child?
Sure. So my mom died of breast cancer when I was 7 years old, and she was 37. And this was a very long time ago in 1970. So it was a very different era of cancer treatment, and there was very little support for cancer patients at that time, and very little grief support. So I don't know that I was told that she was ill. I might have been, but it didn't sink in. So her death really, even though she was ill for some time, it really came as a very sudden event to me at 7 years old. And so my family was kind of the carry on with life, keep going. And as long as we're, carrying out our duties of going to school and preparing meals and kind of keeping the logistics of life together, we're doing well. That was kind of the standard. And so that's kind of what we did. I'm one of 4 children, and my dad, of course, and we're from Cincinnati, so we'd had a lot of family support and neighbors and things. 4 years after my mom died, my dad remarried, and so that kind of continued the sort of carry on, we're moving into the future kind of mindset. My parents had another child a year later, and we moved to a new house, and we really changed up a lot of our life, which at the time was pretty welcome to me. I didn't really question it, but I think it had some long-term detriments in terms of my connection to my mom and my ability to grieve. So as a child, as it was focused on, let's keep ourselves together, and we're just moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, that's two parts of that that really strike me is one is that 7-year-olds, young children, have a hard time understanding what it means when an adult in their life is ill, like how processing that, and especially even if it's a long period of time, that death can, as you said, come as a surprise, because they're not able to process it or understand necessarily the process of illness like that. And then the second thing was that difference between your internal life and what's happening internally with your grief and the external life that just looks like normal life moving on. Yeah.
I don't think I don't know that I had a word that, I don't know that I had a label of grief. I don't think that word was part of my vocabulary at all at that time. I know that I responded by being, again, kind of taking charge of things and being very responsible, you know, kind of taking care of my younger brother and being able to cook meals if needed, and being very, I was always a good student, but I became a, you know, very conscientious, hyper vigilant kind of child. And that looking back, I realized how much anxiety I was really carrying. I don't think I would have characterized myself that way as a child, but I would have said I was together.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Lee, do you want to share with us your story?
Yes. My mom was 49 when she died of a heart attack, and I was 18. So I was much older than Peg was. And it was unexpected. And so kind of similar, even though she, you know, appeared to be sick, we didn't really know what was going on, but ended up being unexpected to us. So she died of a heart attack, and I was in my first semester of college. So I was just starting that. And I'm the youngest of 3. So I have 2 older brothers. So I was the only one living at home at the time. And of course with my dad. So that was unexpected. And kind of similar to Peg, the family just, you know, we, you know, had the funeral and dealt with that. And then it's like, okay, let's move on. Let's just carry on with life. And so like as a family, we didn't really talk much about it. I think at the time it was just easier to carry on than to talk about it. So just carry on with life. And there was nothing like Gilda's Club at the time. So nothing like that for support. And I remember there was like a widowed person's group, you know, for my dad to go to. And so I wondered at the time, is there anything for teenagers? So I think I had called the widowed persons group, and I said, do you know of anything that would be for teens or, you know, someone around my age? And the person was like, no, I don't know of anything. So I just remember hanging up and thinking, wow, you know, I just felt really alone, that there was nothing like that for kids or teenagers like me.
Right. Oh, yeah.
What year was that, Lee?
It was 1992.
Hmm.
Yeah, so way before Gilda's.
Yeah. At least what, 8 years before they even conceived of bringing it here in West Michigan anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Both of your stories make me think about, especially you, Lee, is that developmentally where you're at when you're 18 years old, right? And you're launching out into the world. First of all, you're the only girl in your family, so
Right.
you know, having a mother death is different, because then who do you look for is how to be in the world. And you're just at a moment where you're trying to figure that out. How am I a person in this world, and how am I going to express myself? And typically at that age, we look for the same sex parent for modeling of that.
Right.
Yeah. And then how do you launch when you have a father at home that's grieving, and whether he's talking about it or not, you feel it.
Mhm.
carry that, right? Did you
Mhm,
feel that with
exactly.
your dad? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he was just trying to carry on his own. So, how do you do that and then deal with a teenage daughter? So, yeah, I definitely felt very alone in that regard. And then
Yeah.
just, not knowing anyone else really my age, friends and so on that were in the same stage that I was. So, it's just really kind of alienating and just feel really alone.
Right.
Mhm. Or
Yeah.
not knowing anyone else going through it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there's this sense, I think of 18, there's a sense of aloneness that happens because you're trying to launch, right? And then
Right,
there's this exacerbation of that because of
right.
yeah, your mom's death. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And Peg, I think of you at 7-year-olds are very pragmatic human beings, right? and they're just coming out of the stage where they think that they run the world, but they still feel fairly responsible for what's going on around them. And it sounds like you just lean into that.
Very
Um,
much, very much. I think
yeah,
it's my nature anyway. And
yeah.
then the circumstances kind of made that kind of hyper developed.
Uh, do you think that was a detriment to you in some ways?
Uh, like so many things, and that's actually one of the things I have gained so much from Hope Edelman's work and programs is the comfort that multiple things can be true at the same time. Like, yes, it was harmful to me to be overly responsible as a child. I felt kind of how Lee described, I felt very different in certain ways from my peers. I felt old. Sometimes I felt like a grown-up going to grade school. But in other ways, I think it was not, as coping strategies go, it isn't horrible. I mean, it helped me succeed in life in terms of doing well in school and, kind of making positive connections in places like schools and Girl Scouts and things like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was kind of how it happened. But in the end, I'm okay, I'm like, well, good for me. As a younger me, you did the best you could, and that was not all bad. That was pretty good.
Mhm.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna say something, Lee? Go ahead.
Yeah, Peg, in reading your book and your experience shortly after your mom died and how you called yourself responsible girl, just the things that you took on and the responsibilities that you assumed at such a young age, taking care of a younger brother and making supper and making popcorn at night. And, when your dad was gone, that was a lot for a girl your age to carry on.
Mhm.
I think it was
Yeah.
also a different time. I've had some conversations with actually readers of my book who didn't necessarily experience mother loss, but had kind of some similar experiences of too much responsibility at a young age. I think it might have been something in the culture of the time where people didn't understand how children functioned, and that what was too much maybe we have a more developed sense of that in the present day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree with that we know more about development of children. And I think that we um, hold that more sacred nowadays than we used to, right? It used to be trying to launch our children way early in our growing up years. Yeah. And so that, and kids who are overly responsible tend to get a lot of kudos from adults around them, from their teachers, because they tend to not break rules. They tend to stay in their lane. They tend to not be a problem, and adults around them can rely on them, which sort of exacerbates that a bit.
Exactly. I mean, they seem fine. And I think that's where the idea that children are resilient is true, but it's not always like the lead thing. It should be developed more subtly and supported, not sort of like created by throwing them in the deep end, just let them figure it out.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
And I say
would
that,
agree.
I say that with great empathy to the adults of my life at the time. I mean, I think for a long time I had this unexamined notion that the children were neglected, but the reality was, or not neglected, our emotional needs were neglected, but I've come to fully understand that everyone's emotional needs were neglected. It's not like the adults were enjoying all this great grief support and letting the children be without. It was really just a time where people just didn't really have those conversations very openly. And I also really feel a lot of empathy and compassion for my mom, who was, in her late 30s with 4 children and has this cancer diagnosis. And, I just can't imagine what she went through.
Mm. Oh, that's a good perspective.
And
I
now there are places like Gilda's Club and other agencies that do provide support. It's wonderful. I mean, I think it's so needed and so wonderful.
Mhm.
I agree. Yeah, there's so many topics we could talk on from what you just said, but I want to ask real quick, Lee, do you feel like you became responsible? What do you think your response was to your mother's death in that way?
Yeah, I grew up really quickly at that time. Again, I was the only one left at home, and I was living at home. I wasn't living at college. So just my dad and I, and I'll never forget someone, I'm sure they had good intentions, but someone that I knew shortly after the funeral said, well, I guess you're the woman of the house now. And, again, I know he had good intentions, but I'll never forget that. And I'm like, well, I guess I am, so I just took on that responsibility and, just tried to keep up the house and make supper and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, definitely grew up pretty fast and took on a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah, yeah. Do either of you, I know Peg, you already sort of spoke to this, that do you feel that that's a theme that you still have to manage in your adult life now? Reminding yourself, oh, I don't have to be responsible for all of this, or, oh, yeah.
Yes, in fact, later in the book, it comes up in elder caregiving to my dad and stepmother. It comes up for me periodic. Yes, it really does. And I feel like I have a much more grounded perspective on what my role is in a situation, and that I don't need to hold up the whole world. I can ask for help. I don't have to, tend to all the doctor appointments or all the grocery needs or whatever the individual was requiring. I can ask for help. And that was huge for me. That was really huge.
Yeah. Really having to learn what I call it, in what is inside my hula hoop and what isn't. And
great image.
And what we think is our responsibility, and stepping into knowing what is choice. Because you could choose to do all of that, but as long as you're in choice about it, instead of feeling obligated or in charge of, you're supposed to do that. Yeah.
And not needing it to make myself feel okay or feel less anxious. I can be, okay, I'm anxious about this, or I feel overwhelmed by this. What is available to me to help? It isn't a reflexive, I must care for everyone's needs in order to make myself feel safer. That is a much more examined response in me now.
Yeah, I love in your book, in the introduction, you talked about that you had this experience with your son and his girlfriend, and seemingly it seemed like it was all about that interaction and those things, when you realized, no, this is about my grief. Mm-hmm. And how when we hit developmental stages, or our kids do, and that it brings that up again, that
absolutely
it's poked a bit. Yeah. And then I love that you just gave yourself permission to, and asked for comfort. Mm-hmm. And took care of what needed. Yeah. It's beautiful. So Lee, how about you? Do you feel like this is a theme in your life too, of over responsible or?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just been natural to me to take on a lot of responsibility. And I've learned, that, like Peg said, it is okay to ask for help when you need help, so you don't have to shoulder so many things on your own. So it's not easy to do that, but then once you try that, then it gets a little easier going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love this because I think this is one of the stumbling blocks developmentally that happen to children is they lose that permission to ask for help. And they start to assume that they're supposed to always get it right. And the opposite can happen too with unaddressed grief, is that they start to think that everything they do is wrong and they might as well not even try. And so there's either this over exertion of responsibility or there's an under exertion of responsibility. And both are a response. And I'm sure there's some in the middle there too, but both are responses to grief. Not everybody is able to activate an organizational piece for themselves. Yeah. So, so what do you think has been helpful to you in getting to this place where you can talk about those things? You can write a book about it. You can join a group and know what is the difference. What has been helpful to you guys to get here? Peg, go ahead.
Okay. Well, writing has certainly been, the act of writing has been significant for me. Individual therapy over at different times in my adult life. I mean, I didn't really access my grief until I was in my 20s. It really, a friend's accident that I was present from which she fully recovered, really changed me. It really undid me. And I had to really, it was so noticeable that I really had to examine what is going on here, and kind of drilled into it and discovered, wow, this is grief. And so it's just been kind of incorporating it as part of my life. It's not something that I'm ever going to be over, and kind of just being aware of over and over again. I went to a Motherless Daughters retreat, one of Hope Edelman's retreats, in January of 2018. And I would say that has been one of the most life-changing things I've done. I mean, to sit in a room with other women who lost their mothers young, I could never have imagined how powerful that would be, like to be so seen and so understood. So that I wish I could have had that earlier in my life. But writing, therapy, and connection with other people. I mean, it's really helped me a lot, to the point that I really enjoy these conversations now. After so many years of not talking about it, it feels so liberating and meaningful to share in this manner.
Oh, that's great. Oh, thanks. How about you, Lee?
I also agree that the connection is so helpful. I think, well, as I mentioned earlier, just in the beginning, feeling so different from everyone else. And I think it was not until like I was a junior or senior in college, I had found out one of my friends and classmates' mom also died. So like immediately I just kind of felt drawn to her, or connected, like, wow, there's someone else like that. And so that's where I think places like Gilda's Club or other grief centers are great, just to have a place where people can come together and talk about that. Just knowing that there's someone else who gets it or just understands. And also with the retreat that Peg was talking about, I went in April 2017, and I agree that it was just like an immediate bond with a lot of those ladies, all of them, and then just a more special bond with certain ones. Just having that underlying connection and being able to talk about different things as you've gone through life and as you go through things that are related to grief that like only certain people can understand. So just knowing that those people are there and that you can go to them and talk to them really helps. And also, as Peg said, like writing or journaling, because sometimes things will be in your head and that you just, it's hard to get around, but even just writing them down just kind of takes some of the pressure off. Like, oh, even though I just got it down on paper, it really helps just to kind of get it out, even if no one sees it, or you just write it down and throw it away. It just helps to kind of get that out so it's not stuck in your head.
Yeah, oh, that's great. That's great. It reminds me, and I know that you were adults when you did this, but I'm just thinking about your inner child in this response. Is that there was once I had a new member meeting here at Gilda's, and there was an age difference between, I think it was a tween and like a 7 or 8 year old. And when she realized that this other child had a parent that died, she's, oh, you had a person that died too. And her eyes just got so big. She'd never met anyone. And she was just in the moment of joy of connection, even in her grief. So authentically at that moment. It was just so touching to me and really sunk in for me this, it's almost beyond need. It's beyond want. It is necessary, this connection with other people. Because we are, yeah.
I've witnessed those kinds of moments in my volunteering at Fernside Center here in Cincinnati, and it's incredibly profound. It's just incredibly profound.
Yeah, I agree. And so I feel like even if you do that as an adult, if you haven't had the chance or awareness or whatever, but you come to your grief as an adult, that inner child is still doing that happy dance, that joyful, connecting, moment, even if
I completely agree. I'd really love to see the bereavement world open up to this demographic, because there are just so many people in our generation who had a loss that never got to express it, and especially I think men. And it's just such a need. It's so real. In fact, I had someone ask me this recently, and I said, it's never too late to grieve an early loss. It's never too late. It's always available to you, and the healing can happen at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talked about the inner child. That was definitely one thing that we addressed at the Motherless Daughters retreats is I think we wrote a letter to our inner child, just, addressing that and recognizing that, and, having sympathy for your inner child. And so that I think that's an important part too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sometimes that child is within us, sometimes that child is actually manifested in our life. And so both that empathy, that great connection can happen both ways. So that's great. I feel like we could just talk for the next hour, honestly. There's
so much to say.
There is. So we are kind of coming to the end, but I'm just wondering, what advice do you have for maybe a child who's grieving, or an adult who has a child that's grieving in their life? Peg, we'll start with you. Yeah.
I would say I would feel very compelled to want to address the adult and to urge the adult to honor their own grief and really engage with their own grief, that is a gift they would give their child, to model engagement with grief. Not that it's going to be easy, not that it's going to be fun, but ultimately it's very healthy and very beneficial. And I believe that's the best thing you can do for the child. Secondarily, provide those opportunities for the child in appropriate ways. But by engaging and owning your own grief, it's just would be such a gift to your child. And I would always say to a child that, you're okay. None of this is your fault, and you deserve every bit of support you can find.
Yes.
You are worthy of support. You are worthy of love, and you deserve every opportunity to work through this.
I love that. And that piece of fault, we could probably have a whole conversation, a whole hour on that working through that piece, but we'll save that for the next time. But that's beautiful. Thank you, Peg. And Lee, how about you?
Mm-hmm. I agree with what Peg was saying. And for the adults, just definitely search out some kind of support group, grief support, in person or virtual. I know Gilda's now has in person and virtual, so it's easier for people to connect on that. And even if the adult themselves are not able to talk to the child or provide the support they need, just please find a group or someone that can help, because if things go unaddressed, it's just going to surface later in life. It can surface in lots of different ways, so it's just good to have that connection that we talked about, so that they can work through some of those things.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And yes, they will be okay.
Yeah, that's really the message of hope, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that it is
Right.
okay. Look at the two of you, yeah, that you can still live with your grief and honor your person's memory by living through that.
Yeah, that's another topic for a whole episode of honoring those who have passed on, who have died.
Right.
So
Right.
we may have to have you back 2 more
That's
times.
very near and dear to my heart. I love that topic.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. And I encourage anyone who is watching this today that know your child. You are your child's expert. Know how to help and reach out. Your school, Gilda's club, a therapist, your pastor, close friends. Create community, create connection. Know your child's developmental stages and where they're at with things. And I love this piece of permission to grieve. You have fully all of our permission to grieve and permission to ask for help. No one should have to face grief alone, including you. So, well, thank you so much, Peg and Lee, for coming and sharing your experience and your strength and your hope, and just starting the conversation that could be much deeper. And thank you, Peg, for writing your story.
It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity to open up a conversation about it.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we've had this chance to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to move now from this part of our conversation into our next segment. We keep saying that we're going to have create this big meet the staff sort of announcement, but it hasn't happened yet. We're not that techie here at Gilda's Club.
We're getting there though.
So here it is, meet the staff. Yay. So we're going to talk with Lee a little bit about what is it that she does and how she does it here, and maybe learn a little bit about her personal life too, what she wants to share with us. So Lee, tell us, what does a VP of Finance do? What is that title mean?
Yeah. Well, I've been at Gilda's for almost 10 years now. It'll be 10 years in February, which time goes by so fast. And I started out as finance director, and now moved into VP of Finance and corporate operations. So all that to say, all things financial in accounting. We process bills for payment. I do process payroll and work with our HR person on HR issues.
What, can you tell us what HR is for those who might
Oh,
not know?
sorry, human resources.
Okay, all right.
Yep. So also work on monthly financials. So financial reports. We have a subset of the board called the Finance Committee, and we meet monthly. So we go over our financial reports with the Finance Committee. And also I'm working on our financial audit right now. So we have a fiscal year that ends June 30. And so this is audit time for us that we have every year. So working with the auditors on that. So that's usually busy. And then also I work with our president and other department heads on our annual budget. So we put together the budget each year, and we also work with the finance committee and the board to get the budget approved. And then halfway through the year, we take a look at our budget and see how we've done compared to the budget, and do a forecast for the rest of the fiscal year. So we do that, and throughout the year, obviously just monitor where we're at compared to the budget and forecast, so we can stay on track there. And also work with our auditors on our annual 990 informational tax return. So that usually comes like later in the, or next year, earlier in the year. So we work on that. And also Laugh Fest. Laugh Fest, of course, is a part of Gilda's Club. So Festival of Laughter that we do in March. And lots of work that goes into that. And I, of course, am on the financial side of that. So we have purchase orders and monitor expenses and revenue for that, and do financial reports for that. And during Laugh Fest, when it was in person, I would be in charge of making sure we had enough cash on hand to go out to the events for ticket sales and merchandise sales, and then get that all back, and with help count that and reconcile it to, yeah, so that was a lot. And then of course this last year we had virtual Laugh Fest in 2021, and so 2022 we're hoping to go back to in-person Laugh Fest, and maybe have some virtual options there too. So that'll be coming up in March. So yeah.
Wow, so you have a head full of numbers.
Right.
I would say. And you help us
Yep.
keep our doors open and keep us organized.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so that's
Yep.
great. Wow.
Yeah. And then on the operations side, like I mentioned, working with human resources, and also IT and building and grounds. So trying to keep those things going efficiently, and always looking for ways that we can take a look at our processes and see if we can make things more efficient or better for staff too.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it, our grounds are a big deal, and
Right.
people, find it very healing here, and keeping that all together and running and looking the way it does it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort.
Exactly.
Pretty small
Yep.
staff.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
that's wonderful. So is there anything you want to share with us about maybe you personally, some of your likes, your dislikes, or some of your hobbies? Yeah.
Sure. I like to travel, so like to see different places, see new places, and I like to travel plan, maybe almost even about as much as I like traveling. So I enjoy doing that when we have a trip planned, plan out different places to see and things to do. I like scrapbooking, which also goes along with traveling after I travel. So scrapbooking and documenting, spending time with my family, and also love animals. Yeah, those are kind of some of the things that I like to do. I like to exercise and try to stay healthy also.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, well, thank you. It's such a treat to have you on staff. And I
Thanks.
know people probably don't see your face too much because you were hidden up here away, and now you're
Right.
downstairs more. But so if you're in the clubhouse or here sometime and you see Lee, then you'll know who she is, and you can stop.
Mhm. Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, again, thank you both for being here with us, and Peg, all the way from one of my favorite cities, Cincinnati, such a great place, and for sharing yourselves with us. It's so great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again for having me.
Yeah. And for all of you out there, thank you for joining us. And if you really found this helpful, please share this post. It's being recorded, and so it'll be on our YouTube page, on our website, and on Facebook if you want to look back on it again. And we are doing some in-person and some virtual programs still. So if you're interested in trying to figure out if your group or if you're new to a cancer or grief journey and you want to get connected to our free support services, please give us a call, 453-8300, or look on our website, gildasclubgr.org. Our calendar is on there, and it's pretty clear which is virtual and which is hybrid, which means here in the clubhouse and online at the same time. We're actually doing that right now. We're in a hybrid moment. And so we have other opportunities too for involvement, workshops and whatnot. We would love to talk with you and see you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Know that we're closed next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to celebrate the holiday. We hope that you have a safe and good holiday. Take care. Bye.